The term war on drugs sounds like a slogan, something from a political ad campaign, because that's exactly what it is. Coined by Richard Nixon in 1971, it wasn't just a metaphor. It was a declaration of actual war, not against a country, not against an army, but against millions of people who use, possess, sell, or even associate with illegal substances. But to understand the war on drugs, you have to understand what it really targets and what it doesn't target. Despite the rhetoric about safety and health, this war was never focused on making substances safer or preventing harm. It doesn't regulate potency. It doesn't educate people about risk. It doesn't promote treatment first. Instead, the war on drugs operates almost entirely on punishment. Arrests for possession, prison sentences for sale or distribution, civil asset forfeiture, that's taking your property without conviction, parole violations for even minor use, and criminal records that follow people for life. The law doesn't care whether someone was violent or peaceful. It doesn't ask if they harmed anyone. It only cares that they possessed something illegal. And that's the first sign that this isn't really a war on harm. It's a war on behavior, on personal choice. Let's make something painfully clear. The war on drugs doesn't distinguish between a violent trafficker and a college student caught with a joint. Both are labeled criminals. Both face life-altering consequences, and both are processed through the same dehumanizing system. And that system? It's massive. In 2022 alone, over 1.5 million drug arrests were made in the United States, nearly 90% of those for possession. More people were arrested for marijuana than all violent crimes combined. Over 400,000 people are currently incarcerated in the United States for drug law violations. This isn't fringe policy. This is mainstream, and it affects millions. But it wasn't always this way. Before the 1900s, drugs like opium, cannabis, and even cocaine were sold legally in pharmacies. They were sometimes abused, yes, but they weren't the center of a $1 trillion enforcement empire. So what changed? It wasn't science. It wasn't a public health breakthrough. It was politics and fear. Politicians found that scaring people about drugs, especially when associated with marginalized groups, was a powerful tool to gain votes and justify crackdowns. They claimed it was about saving lives. Oh, the irony that they ended up building a system that destroys human lives. So what is the war on drugs really? The war on drugs is a legal framework that criminalizes possession, sale, and production of certain substances, not because of consistent harm metrics, but because of historical bias and political convenience. It's funding pipeline that militarizes local police, expands federal agencies, and creates incentives to seize property, regardless of guilt. It's a cultural weapon that justifies surveillance, control, and censorship, especially against poor and minority communities. And it's a moral illusion, sold as protection, but functioning as punishment for peaceful behavior. So to summarize, it's not about reducing demand. Drug use has persisted. It's not about saving lives. Overdose deaths are higher than ever. It's not even about public health, because this system discourages treatment and education first. And it's not even about legality, because legal drugs like alcohol and tobacco cause far more harm, yet remain untouched. No, this isn't a war on drugs. It's a war on us. More specifically, a war on your freedom. And it's time we understood how it began.